Okay, so what is the NQF? The NQF is not a physical thing, it's a concept. The NQF is the big umbrella term for some of the concrete things that sit underneath it. Under this big umbrella idea of NQF, we have our national law and regulations, we have our learning frameworks like the earliest learning framework, My Time, Our Place, whatever learning frameworks you want to use. Okay, so we have our national quality standards and we have the assessment and rating system. So these are the four concrete things that sit under the big umbrella idea of NQF. And this often confuses people because they think that the NQF is a thing. It's not anything. The NQF is just an idea, and underneath there are some concrete things. National law, national regulations, national quality standards, EYLF, My Time, Our Place, or whatever you use in your own state and territory, because some states and territories also have their own. For example, you might have the Victorian Early Years Learning Framework, which is slightly different, and so on. And then we have an assessment and rating process. So these are the concrete things that sit under the NQF. Now, it's really important that people go through and read the regulations and the law and be really familiar with them. In the law, the most relevant section is Part 6. That's the part that has all the operational information that you need to know. It actually lists all the offences, everything that you can get fined for. For example, if you use inappropriate discipline, the fines range from around $34,600 for an individual educator to $516,000 for a large provider. It lists fines for not meeting ratios, qualification requirements, not having the right programs, and so many more. And then within the regulations, it's Chapter 4 that's the most relevant. Okay, so most of the other things in the law and the regulations are around operating an early childhood service, but it's more about how to become a provider or kind of the back end stuff. But the day-to-day stuff in the law is Part 6, and in the regulations, it's Chapter 4. Now, don't forget, in the regulations, there's also a little bit at the end, which is the individual state and territory differences. Okay, so don't forget to go and look in Chapter 7 at the end for those little changes that are like the different ratios in different states or different qualification requirements in different states. Those little differences are there in Chapter 7. But mainly the day-to-day operations, your qualifications, your ratios, what you need to have on an enrollment form, what you need to have when you go on an excursion, health and safety stuff, all that is in the Chapter 4 of the regulations. And I'll just point out a specific regulation, Regulation 168, which is the regulation which lists all the different policies that a centre needs to have. I know some services have lots of different policies, some services have hundreds of policies, but really there's only about 30 that are required according to the regulations. And you might need an extra few like HR or work health and safety, those kinds of policies. But generally there's about 30 that you need to be complying with the national regulations. Now, like I said, the Early Years Learning Framework and My Time, Our Place, both of those were recently changed, okay? So make sure you're using the correct version 2 version of the EYLF and My Time, Our Place. And then national quality standards. Don't forget, from January 2026, there's been a couple of changes to the national quality standards, particularly Quality Area 2, Quality Area 7. They just changed some of the wording slightly to include the terminology of child safety. And within the national quality standards, we have 7 quality areas. Most people know what they are. I think most people would be quite familiar with them. Within each quality area, we have what we call standards, and then we have elements. So we have 7 quality areas, we have 15 standards, and we have 40 elements. So when you're writing your documentation and referring to NQS, make sure that you're thinking about, am I referring to an element, a standard, or the quality area? Finally, the assessment and rating system, which has also undergone a lot of changes recently. There's a shorter notice period now for assessment and rating, and don't forget your regulatory authority will often come and do compliance visits, maybe unannounced compliance visits, spot checks, and so on. And if you've had an issue at your service, they're likely to come and visit again. Assessment and rating usually happens once every 3 years. That's kind of the standard that's expected. Of course, there's a bit of a backlog and it depends on the situation. Like if you're a more risky service or if you've had quite a few incidents, they may come more often. If you're a working towards service, they might come more often. If you're an exceeding or excellent service, then they may come less often. So there are lots of different factors that might go into how often your regulatory authority comes to visit you. But that's kind of the snapshot of the NQF, National Quality Framework, this big umbrella term with laws and regulations, national quality standards, UILF, My Time, Our Place, and then the assessment and rating system. That's it.